Excellent. Today, we'll sell that old clunker of your wife's, David, and turn her into our maid. My husband's and his mistress's laughter echoed through the house. They didn't know I heard everything. Struggling to hold back tears, I silently began to formulate a plan. Exactly at noon, when the buyer arrived, and David smugly opened the envelope with the documents, his smile instantly vanished, the moment he saw the contents. But before we begin this story, please write in the comments what city you're watching us from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so our channel can grow and delight you with new, interesting stories. The morning sunbeams, piercing through the gaps in the kitchen blinds, should have brought warmth, but for Sarah, this morning was icy, chilling her to the bone. The clock on the wall showed 6 a.m. In her hands, she held a tray with a cup of strong black coffee and freshly baked ricotta pancakes, still steaming. The sweet aroma of vanilla and the bitter scent of coffee mingled in the air, smells that usually brought a smile to David, her husband, upon waking. Sarah's steps halted 6 feet from the living room door. Her intention to surprise him with breakfast suddenly morphed into a pounding heart, not from fear of dropping the tray, but from the voices seeping through the thin wall. Laughter, but not ordinary laughter. It was full of malice, humiliation, and triumph. Yes, our plan is perfect, David. It was the voice of Tiffany, a woman who had been living in their house for 3 days because her rental apartment had supposedly flooded. David had introduced her as a colleague in need of help, but the tone of her voice this morning was nothing like that of someone in distress. Are you sure Sarah won't suspect anything? David's deep voice resonated, accompanied by the sound of him sipping coffee that she hadn't prepared. And yet, Sarah was on her way to serve her husband his morning coffee. "Oh, David, my boy," Carol's voice, Sarah's mother-in-law, now joined, full of contempt. "Your wife is a complete fool. Look at her. 3 years of marriage, and all she knows how to do is bow, cook, clean, and do laundry. She doesn't understand important documents. She's useless." A brief silence fell. Then they laughed again. This laughter was like blades, cutting into Sarah's ears. "You're right, Mom," David said, laughing. "She thinks I'm head over heels in love with her, but I only needed her as a free housekeeper while I waited for the opportunity to fully claim her father's inheritance." "Exactly," Tiffany chimed in enthusiastically. "So let's sell that useless clunker of your wife's today. That Land Cruiser is worth a decent amount, David, enough for the down payment on our new house in a luxury-gated community. And we'll make Sarah our maid here. After all, the role of a servant suits her much better than the mistress of the house." "Agreed," Carol said cheerfully. "The buyer will be here at noon, won't he? I hope everything goes smoothly. As soon as the car is sold and the money is in your account, David, we'll force her to sign over the deed to this house. If she refuses, I'll make her life so miserable that she'll run away herself. She won't be able to bear it." Sarah felt her knees buckle. The tray in her hands trembled violently. "Make her our maid." These words echoed repeatedly in her head. That's why all her kindness was considered foolishness, her patience a weakness. That Land Cruiser was a birthday gift from her late father. This house was also bought by her father with cash shortly before his death. He had given it to Sarah as a family home. David had entered this house with only a suitcase of clothes and sweet promises that had turned into bitter lies. Sarah took a deep breath, holding back the tears that threatened to burst out. No, she mustn't cry now. If she walked in there in tears and caused a scene, they would realize their plan was exposed, and they would become wary. And Sarah knew that with such cunning people, one must fight not with emotions, but with strategy, even more sophisticated. She slowly and silently retreated back to the kitchen. She placed the tray on the marble countertop, looked at her reflection in the kitchen window, a face rarely adorned with makeup, a face that always smiled, serving her husband and mother-in-law. "Good," Sarah whispered to her reflection. Her gaze changed, becoming cold. There was no longer the submissiveness of an obedient wife. "You want to play a game? Fine, we'll play. But I'm the director now." 5 minutes later, Sarah restored her face to its former expression. A little tired, with slumped shoulders, exactly like the foolish wife they had spoken of. She picked up the tray again and headed for the living room. This time, She deliberately walked heavier so they would hear her. "Good morning, David." "Mom," Sarah greeted in a quiet voice. The scene in the living room was disgusting if one looked at it with open eyes. David sat on the main sofa, his feet propped on the coffee table. Next to him, almost pressed against him, was Tiffany, holding a plate of cookies that Sarah had baked. Carol sat in the rocking chair, scanning Sarah from head to toe as if she were dirt. An instant silence fell in the room. David quickly lowered his feet. He was slightly nervous. Tiffany moved a little away. "Hey, Sarah, why are you only appearing now?" "Your husband has been hungry for a long time," Carol snapped, breaking the silence with feigned anger. "Forgive me, Mom, we ran out of gas in the stove. I had to change the propane tank first." Sarah lied effortlessly. She placed the coffee and pancakes on the table. "You're such a slow wife. It's a good thing Tiffany was here and entertained me with conversation. Otherwise, I would have died of boredom waiting for you to cook," David scoffed, taking a pancake without a word of thanks. Sarah smiled faintly. "I'm sorry, David. By the way, would you like coffee, Tiffany? I'll make some more right now." Tiffany quietly chuckled, forcing a sweet smile. "Don't worry, Sister Sarah. I've already had tea. And I don't drink that kind of coffee. I usually drink coffee at coffee shops." A subtle jab. Sarah mentally noted it. The coffee she called that kind was a premium Arabica blend, costing several $100s a bag. But of course, Tiffany's taste, accustomed to instant 3-in-1, wouldn't understand. "Sarah," David called. His voice suddenly shifted to an authoritative tone, which he usually used when asking for money. "Be home at noon today, okay?" "Yes, David. Why?" "I don't go out much anyway," Sarah replied, pouring Carol some water. "Excellent. My friend will arrive at noon. He wants to check the condition of our Land Cruiser. The registration is expiring soon. He's a friend of mine from the DMV. He can help speed up the process. Get the documents ready. The vehicle title and registration, okay?" This was a blatant lie. Sarah had just paid the vehicle tax last month through an online application, but she feigned perfect bewilderment. "Oh, is that so, David? How clever of you. You even have contacts at the DMV. All right, I'll get everything ready. They're in the drawer, in the cabinet upstairs." David's eyes sparkled. They exchanged glances with Carol and Tiffany, a sign of victory. They thought the fish had taken the bait. "Well, don't just stand there like a statue. There's a mountain of laundry in the utility room," Tiffany interjected, as if she owned the place. "You should be ashamed," Carol ordered, waving Sarah away like an annoying fly. "Yes, Mom, I'm going," Sarah said submissively. She turned. The moment her back was to them, her innocent smile vanished. Her jaw clenched. Laugh now," Sarah thought. "Enjoy your last ricotta pancakes in this house. Because at noon, you'll be devouring your own karma." Sarah didn't go to the utility room. She went into the pantry next to the garage. David rarely went in there because, according to him, it was dusty and he would start sneezing. David was a fastidious man, afraid of getting dirty, a weakness that now played into Sarah's hands. In the corner of the pantry, behind boxes of a broken blender and an old fan, a small safe was built into the wall. This was Sarah's father's legacy. Only she knew the combination. Sarah quickly turned the number dials. Click. The safe door opened. Inside were neatly folded all the documents that had become the object of her husband's and mother-in-law's greed. The deed to the house, a luxurious 2-story cottage, the vehicle title and registration for the Mitsubishi Land Cruiser, and several savings account books with deposits. All in Sarah R. Miller's name. Sarah's father was a successful but cautious contractor. Before marrying off his only daughter to David, he sensed something was wrong. David was too smooth-talking, too good at putting on a show, but his gaze was always fixed on her father's Rolex or the cars in the garage, so her father insisted on a prenuptial agreement, separating their assets. David had signed it then, thinking that Sarah's fortune wasn't that significant, and he was sure that over time he could persuade her to transfer the property to his name. David was gravely mistaken. Sarah took the original title and registration and looked at them. "Because of this car. You want to make me your maid?" she whispered bitterly. Sarah took a large brown envelope, exactly like the one she stored documents in. She didn't leave it empty. Instead, she stuffed it with all sorts of junk mail, photocopies of recipes, supermarket flyers from last week, and old electricity bills. She made it as thick as the folder with the originals, and on top of this pile of garbage, Sarah placed a sheet of paper. She took a red marker and wrote in large letters, "Menu for your new maid." She smiled with satisfaction. She hid the fake envelope under her clothes and put the original documents in her old, worn but sturdy handbag. Sarah knew David wouldn't check the contents of the envelope in front of her. He was too overconfident. He would take the envelope, give it to his friend the buyer, and open it there to show off. Such was David's character. First to put on a show, then to think. And that was the moment Sarah was waiting for. But this wasn't enough. Sarah needed a legal weapon to strike them all at once. She pulled out her mobile phone with its cracked screen. A phone David had bought her secondhand from a friend to save money, while David himself used the latest iPhone, purchased with Sarah's credit card. Sarah dialed a number that was saved in her contacts as construction supplies to avoid suspicion. The phone rang twice before a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Hello, Sarah. Is something wrong? How can attorney Victor Peterson help you?" Victor Peterson, her late father's trusted attorney, and a distant uncle whom she considered family. Uncle Victor, Sarah's voice trembled, not from sadness, but from adrenaline. "Do you have time today at noon? I need you to come to our house. If possible, bring 2 security personnel from your office." Silence fell on the other end, and then Victor Peterson's tone became serious. His lawyer's instinct kicked in. "What happened, Sarah? Did David mess up again?" "Worse than just messing up, Uncle Victor. David, his mother, and his mistress are planning to sell my Land Cruiser, the one Dad gave me, today at noon. They think I don't know. They're also planning to kick me out or make me a maid after transferring the house to themselves. The scoundrel!" Victor Peterson raised his voice. "Ungrateful people. Your father once picked him up from nothing, gave him startup capital for a business that disappeared without a trace, and now he wants to bite the hand that fed him. That's why I need you, Uncle Victor. I've already hidden the original documents. Today at noon, David and the buyer will have their transaction in the living room. I want you to arrive at that exact moment. We'll catch them red-handed." "Okay. I understand your plan," Victor Peterson said. His voice was angry but controlled. "Sarah, don't worry. I'll prepare the asset freeze documents and a cease and desist letter. By the way, what about your joint account? I'm just about to take care of that now, Uncle Victor. I'll transfer everything to my personal account via mobile banking. I've tolerated them cutting the household budget for too long, but I won't let them squander everything. Do it immediately. Leave a very small amount so they don't suspect when they check the balance at the ATM, but empty the deposit." "Okay, Uncle Victor. Thank you. See you later. Don't knock, just come in. I won't lock the gate. I'll leave it ajar." "Good. Just hold on for another 4 hours. We'll teach them a lesson they won't forget for the rest of their lives." The call ended. Sarah took a deep breath. She immediately opened the banking app on her phone. Her fingers quickly moved across the screen. Transfer to Sarah R. Miller's personal account. Amount: $200,000. The entire amount from the matured deposit. Transaction successful. Now, on David's main account, for which Carol had the ATM card, only pennies remained, about $3,000. Enough for gas, but not enough to escape to another city. Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She was no longer a victim. Now she was a hunter, waiting for her prey to fall into the trap. With a light step, she walked out of the pantry, ready to play the role of the foolish and submissive wife again. 11 a.m. The sun was high and beginning to beat down, just as it was inside Sarah, who was pretending to diligently mop the living room floor. While David and Tiffany watched Netflix on the sofa, David's foot almost hit Sarah's head as she was cleaning under the table. "Be careful, scrub. You'll get the rug wet," David shouted, not tearing his eyes from the screen. "Yes, David. I'm sorry," Sarah replied softly. Suddenly, David's phone rang. He looked at the screen and smiled widely. He signaled to Tiffany and Carol. who was eating fruit salad at the dining table. "He'll be here soon," David whispered to Tiffany, but loud enough for Sarah to hear. David cleared his throat, changing his tone to a sickeningly sweet one. "My dear Sarah." Sarah straightened her aching back, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. "Yes, David. Where are the documents I asked for this morning? My friend will be here shortly. It would be inconvenient if we kept him waiting. He's a busy man." Sarah slowly nodded. "Oh, yes, of course, David. One moment, I'll get them from the bedroom." Sarah went into the bedroom. She took out the very brown envelope, stuffed with junk, that she had prepared that morning. Her heart pounded wildly. This was the critical moment. If David opened the envelope now, everything would begin prematurely. Sarah emerged from the bedroom, clutching the envelope tightly to her chest, as if it were the greatest treasure she was afraid to let go of. This acting was important to amuse David's ego. "Here, David." Sarah extended the envelope with a deliberate tremor in her hands. "But this is definitely just for re-registration, David. After all, it's Dad's favorite car." David roughly snatched the envelope from her hands. "Yes, you blabbermouth. Don't you trust your husband? I'm the head of the family. I know what's best for our property." "Our property?" Sarah inwardly sneered. "Since when did it become ours?" Carol, seeing the thick envelope change hands, smiled widely. "That's how it should be, Sarah. A wife should obey. If your husband wants to multiply your wealth, you should support him, not suspect him." "Yes, Mom," Sarah replied, lowering her head. David weighed the envelope in his hand, feeling its thickness. It's thick. These are the original vehicle title and registration. Or did you take a photocopy?" Sarah looked David straight in the eyes, feigning the most innocent gaze she was capable of. "Originals, David. I took them from the safe, the combination to which you don't know." "Oh, I mean, from the cabinet." Sarah pretended to misspeak. David laughed contemptuously. "Ha, that old safe of yours. We'll crack it open someday. All right, go to the kitchen, prepare a big meal. We'll celebrate after the deal. My friend will stay for dinner too." "What should I cook, David?" "Anything, as long as it's delicious. Beef stroganoff or dumplings?" "Just not those eternal meatballs. I'm tired of them," Tiffany interjected, as if she were the hostess. "Okay, Tiffany," Sarah replied. As Sarah turned to go to the kitchen, she heard David whisper to Tiffany. "Easy, right?" She just handed it over. "What a fool, what can I say?" "You're a genius, darling. I can't wait to get the money," Tiffany replied in a coquettish voice. Sarah slowly closed the kitchen door. She leaned her back against the door, looking at the wall clock. 11:30 a.m. Half an hour left. Victor Peterson was on his way. The car buyer was on his way. And David's downfall was also on its way. Sarah didn't prepare beef stroganoff or dumplings, as ordered. Instead, she poured herself a glass of cold water from the refrigerator, comfortably settled onto a kitchen chair, and began to count the minutes. She didn't need to cook for their victory celebration, because there wouldn't be one. There would be a grand performance in Sarah's life, and she had a free VIP ticket. Exactly at 12 p.m., a loud and arrogant car horn blared from the street. Prolonged and repetitive, it revealed the impatient character of its owner. David, who had been nervously pacing the room and looking out the window all this time, jumped with joy. His tense face suddenly brightened. "Here he is! Tony's arrived!" David shouted. He turned to Tiffany and Carol. "Put on welcoming faces. This is big money." Tiffany adjusted her blonde hair, quickly glanced in the wall mirror, and then coquettishly hung on David's arm. "Yes, boss. As soon as we get the money, we'll book tickets for a vacation." "Yes, of course, Sarah," David yelled towards the kitchen. Sarah came out, pretending to hurry. She was still wearing the old housecoat she had deliberately put on, the best costume for this role. "Yes, David. Open the gate faster." "He's an important guest," David ordered. Sarah nodded and almost ran to the entrance. When she opened the heavy wrought iron gates, a black, old sedan with dark-tinted windows drove into the yard. The driver got out. Tony, a stout man in a polo shirt whose buttons barely met over his stomach, emerged, smirking. A thick fake gold chain hung around his neck and a wooden bracelet on his wrist. His whole appearance screamed car flipper. "Oh, David, great to see you, buddy." Tony greeted David with a loud slap on the back. "Hi, Tony. Everything's good. Come on in, come on in. First, take a look at the car." David pointed to the white Land Cruiser, neatly parked in the garage. Sarah had just washed the car that morning at David's command, so its body gleamed in the sun. Tony let out a long whistle. He walked around the car, patted the hood, lightly kicked a tire, checking the pressure. His eyes were like a wolf's, seeing a fat sheep. "Well, smooth, David. You rarely drive it?" Tony asked, stroking the side mirror. "Very rarely. My wife only drives it to the market, and not often. More often she walks, so the mileage is low." "Exclusive," David boasted. He didn't mention that Sarah often used the car to deliver food to the children's shelter on Fridays. David didn't know about that. All right, it'll do," Tony nodded. Then his gaze fell on Sarah, standing by the garage door, waiting for further instructions. Tony clapped David on the shoulder, laughing lecherously. "Is that your new maid, David?" "Not bad. Young, though she looks worn out. Submissive looking." Blood boiled in Sarah's veins when she heard this, but her face remained impassive. David laughed loudly, a laugh full of contempt. "Hey, what are you saying? That's my wife, Sarah." Tony's eyes widened, and he laughed even louder, as if it were the funniest joke in the world. "Seriously? I thought she was the maid." "Sorry, she just doesn't look like the lady of the house." Tony looked at Tiffany, who stood proudly next to David. "Now she looks like your lady of the house, David." "Ha! Now I understand why you're selling the car. Need capital to change wives, huh?" Tiffany smirked, pleased with the compliment. "Oh, Tony, you're such a flatterer. David often complains to me that he regrets his choice. Now he wants to fix everything." "Enough already," Carol interrupted them, coming out of the house and fanning herself with a $1,000 bill. "No need to chatter here. The neighbors will hear. Let's go, Tony, we'll talk inside. It's hot out here. Sarah, make some cold juice. Sweet, not like your yesterday's concoction." "Yes, Mom," Sarah replied. Everyone entered the living room. Sarah followed them. She watched David seat Tony on the soft leather sofa, a sofa Sarah had bought with her Christmas bonus. Tony sat down, crossing his legs, lit a cigarette without asking, and flicked ashes onto the floor, even though an ashtray was on the table. "So, Tony, as we agreed yesterday on the phone, $75,000 cash today?" David asked. He needed the money immediately, before Sarah found out or her family suspected. Tony blew a smoke ring that filled the air-conditioned living room. You're in a hurry. Let's look at the documents first. Vehicle title, registration, bill of sale, spare keys. If everything's in order, the money's yours right away." "I have it here, in my bag." Tony patted his leather shoulder bag, which looked stuffed. "Don't worry, it's all there. I prepared everything," David said with full confidence. He looked at Sarah, who had just entered with a tray holding 5 glasses of bright red juice. "Put it here, Sarah, and leave. Sweep up or do something else. You don't need to listen to men's talk." Sarah slowly placed the glasses down. She saw beads of sweat, the sweat of greed, on David's forehead. Her husband's hands trembled not from fear, but from extreme excitement. "Here are the documents." David took the thick brown envelope Sarah had given him earlier. The envelope lay on the table directly in front of Tony. Sarah slowly retreated to the corner of the room. She took a broom and pretended to dust the corner of the display cabinet, but her eyes sharply observed every movement. The moment of David's fall was about to begin. The atmosphere in the living room was tense for different reasons. David, Tiffany, and Carol were tense with anticipation of thousands of dollars. Tony was tense because he wanted to quickly get a cheap car to resell it at a profit. And Sarah, she was tense, holding back the laughter that was about to burst out. "All right, let's see," Tony said. He extinguished his cigarette in the ashtray and reached for the brown envelope. "Wow, it's thick. Looks like there's a service record here, too. Everything's included. My wife kept it. She's good at keeping things, even if she's slow-witted." David insulted Sarah again to spice up the conversation. Tiffany quietly giggled, sipping her juice. Tony slowly, with a dramatic pause, untied the strings on the envelope. The rustling of paper was clearly audible in the quiet room. David puffed out his chest, ready to receive praise for the completeness of the documents. Tony pulled out all the contents of the envelope at once, his eyebrows furrowed. Instead of the blue registration certificate he expected to see, no title and no bill of sale appeared from the envelope. The first paper Tony held in his hands was a white sheet with red marker writing. Tony squinted to read, "Menu for your new maid." Tony read the writing with bewilderment. He looked at David. "What does this mean, David? A secret code?" David's face instantly changed from smug to bewildered. "What is that? Maybe I grabbed the wrong one? Look what's underneath." Tony threw the sheet onto the table. He picked up the next one. "Beef stroganoff recipe." He read again. He began to get irritated. "David, are you selling a car or opening a cafe? What is this?" David panicked. He snatched the stack of papers from Tony's hands. His hands trembled as he flipped through the next sheets. A blurry photocopy of a passport, a flyer with discounts from Grocery Mart from last month, an electricity bill, an empty spice packet, a torn newspaper clipping, no vehicle title, no registration, no important documents. Silence. Deafening silence. Only the ticking of the wall clock was audible. Tick, tick-tock. David's face first paled, then slowly turned crimson. The veins on his neck bulged. He felt humiliated in front of Tony, in front of Tiffany, and in front of his own mother. This is garbage," David yelled. His voice broke with fury. He threw the papers into the air, and they scattered across the living room. A shower of junk mail fell onto the expensive rug. Tiffany gasped. The glass of juice almost fell from her hands. "David, why is there garbage in there? You said you checked it." "I only held it from the outside. It was thick. I thought everything was all right." David defended himself, panicking. He angrily turned to the corner of the room where Sarah stood with the broom. "Sarah!" This scream was so loud that it seemed the windows were about to shatter. Sarah, with expert acting, wide-eyed, she covered her mouth with her hand, as if in complete shock. "Oh my God, David, why are you scattering papers? Those are the recipes I was going to cook for dinner." Tony stood up, looking disappointed. "David, are you making fun of me? I drove across town, brought cash, and you're playing jokes. I'm a busy man, buddy. I don't have time for this circus." "Wait, Tony. I swear. 1 minute, just a technical problem." David grabbed Tony's arm and turned to Sarah with a murderous glare. He quickly walked up to his wife. "You," David said, pointing his finger directly at Sarah's nose. "Where are the original vehicle title and registration? Don't pretend you don't know anything." Sarah backed away until her back hit the display cabinet. She gripped the broom handle tightly, as if it were her shield. "David, why are you angry?" Sarah's voice trembled, as if she was about to cry. "You said this morning to take the documents from the drawer upstairs. I took what was in the drawer upstairs. There were indeed recipes and shopping lists there." "Sarah, you liar," David yelled. He raised his hand, intending to strike, which made Sarah flinch, a fake reaction. But David restrained himself, remembering he had guests. "I kept the documents in the safe. You know the combination, don't you?" "You switched the contents." Carol intervened in the quarrel. Her elderly face was crimson with anger. She quickly approached Sarah. "Oh, you deliberately humiliated your husband. Listen here. This house, this car, all of it, rightfully belongs to your husband. You just live here. Tell us where the documents are, or I'll hit you." "I swear, Mom, I don't know," Sarah cried, without tears. "David didn't tell me the combination to the safe," he said. "It's a man's secret. I just took what he told me to." Tiffany, seeing her money flying away, added fuel to the fire. "David, she's definitely lying. Look at her face. So innocent. She surely hid them somewhere. Search her room or drag her to the basement, make her confess." "Exactly," David shouted. "Tony, wait a minute. I'll make this woman talk right now." Tony grunted. "I'll give you 5 minutes. If the documents aren't here, I'm leaving. And don't expect me to ever deal with you again, David. You're not a professional. You can't even handle your own wife, let alone business. Tony's words struck David's ego harder than a physical slap. His masculine pride was trampled. He felt worthless. And the easiest way for a worthless man to feel great is to humiliate a woman. David roughly grabbed Sarah's hand. His nails dug into her flesh. "Ow, David!" Sarah cried out. This time the pain was real. "It hurts. My heart hurts more from your deception." David dragged Sarah to the middle of the room amidst the scattered recipes. "Now confess, where are the vehicle title and registration for the Land Cruiser? Where is the deed to the house? I know you took everything. Confess, or I'll report to the police that you stole your husband's property." Sarah winced from the pain in her hand, but inside, she smiled coldly. "Report to the police. Go ahead, David. The police will just laugh when they find out who the real owner of all this is." "David, let go of me. It hurts." "Answer first," Carol screamed, now pinching Sarah's side. "Ungrateful woman. We took you in, fed you, and this is how you repay us. Who do you think you are? You're just a leech in my son's life." The tension reached its peak. David raised his hand again, ready to deliver a powerful blow. Tony merely watched, lighting another cigarette. He didn't care. Tiffany smirked maliciously, enjoying Sarah's humiliation. As David's hand was already descending, ding-dong! The doorbell rang again. This time, the sound was polite, rhythmic, but persistent. David's hand froze 2 inches from Sarah's cheek. He was breathing heavily. He looked surprised at the slightly ajar front door. "Who else could that be?" David said irritably. "They're interfering when a man is angry." "I'll see," Carol said, still gasping with anger. She quickly went to the door. "Who is it? Don't they know people are busy?" Carol flung the door open and froze, her mouth agape. The curses she was ready to shout caught in her throat. 3 men stood on the doorstep. In front was a man in his 50s, sturdy and authoritative. He wore an expensive dark gray suit, a silk blue tie, and leather shoes that gleamed brighter than David's future. In his hands, he held a leather briefcase and a cane with an eagle's head pommel, which gave him an aristocratic air. Behind him stood 2 strong young men in black safari shirts that emphasized their biceps. Their faces were impassive, and their gazes sharp as radars scanning the room. Victor Peterson, senior partner of a renowned law firm, famous throughout the city. Who are you?" Carol stammered. All her boldness evaporated at the sight of these men. Victor Peterson smiled slightly, politely but coldly. "Good afternoon, madam. My apologies for the disturbance. I am looking for Miss Sarah Miller. Is she here?" Victor Peterson's voice was calm, but loud enough to be heard in the living room. David, still holding Sarah's hand, suddenly froze. He let go of her, as if he had been electrocuted. He recognized that face. He had seen him once, at Sarah's father's funeral 3 years ago. But back then, he hadn't paid much attention, busy calculating the inheritance. "It's Mr. Peterson," David whispered. Sarah, just released, adjusted her housecoat. She didn't run, didn't hide. She straightened up. "Please come in, Uncle Victor," David shouted from the room, trying to be polite, but his voice trembled with nervousness. He quickly whispered to Tiffany and Tony, "Tony, put out that cigarette. This is a high-powered lawyer. He charges a fortune. I don't know why he's here." Victor Peterson entered, passing the still-stunned Carol. His 2 security guards followed him. Their steps were firm and synchronized, making it seem as if the floor of the house was shaking. When Victor Peterson entered the living room, the contrast became obvious. On one side, Tony, the car flipper with his unbuttoned shirt and cigarette smoke, Tiffany, the mistress in a too revealing dress, and a sweaty David. On the other, the elegant Victor Peterson and his 2 gigantic bodyguards. Tony, with the instincts of a streetwise man, immediately sensed trouble. He quickly extinguished his cigarette. "Whoa, serious people here," he whispered to David. "Good afternoon, mister." "David!" Victor Peterson greeted. He didn't shake David's hand, only gave a slight nod. His gaze fell on the papers scattered on the floor. He raised an eyebrow. It seems I've walked into the middle of an argument. Ah, yes, Uncle Victor, just some minor family issues. My wife is a bit messy. David tried to laugh, but it came out strained. What can I do for you, Uncle Victor? Did my father-in-law leave another will? David found hope again. Maybe there's more inheritance, he thought. Victor Peterson didn't answer David. He turned to Sarah. His gaze softened. Good afternoon, Sarah. I'm sorry, dear. I'm 5 minutes late. Traffic on the freeway, Victor Peterson said in a paternal tone. Everyone in the room fell silent. Uncle, since when was such a high-powered lawyer so close to Sarah? Sarah took a deep breath. Her moment had come. She walked forward, past David, Tiffany, and the papers scattered on the floor. She no longer hunched. Her steps were firm. It's all right, Uncle Victor. You came just in time, Sarah replied. Her voice had changed. There was no longer the tremor of fear. No pleading notes. Her voice was clear, firm, and authoritative. Sarah extended her hand. Victor Peterson took it and lightly kissed the back of her hand. A sign of respect from an attorney to his principal client. David, Carol, and Tiffany froze with open mouths. The tension for David's side became unbearable. Please sit down, Uncle Victor, Sarah said, pointing to the only clean armchair, not occupied by David's company. Victor Peterson calmly sat down, placing his briefcase on his lap. His 2 bodyguards stood on either side of the chair, arms crossed, gazing sharply at Tony, who was already squirming and wanted to leave. Sarah, what does this mean? David said, trying to regain control, though his voice trembled. Why did you call a lawyer here? We don't have money to pay him. Sarah slowly turned to David. She looked her husband straight in the eyes. For the first time in 3 years of their marriage, David saw something new in his wife's eyes. Emptiness. No love, no fear, no respect. Only a cold gaze, as if at a stranger. Sarah didn't answer David. Instead, she turned to Victor Peterson. Uncle Victor, are the documents I asked for ready? Yes, Sarah, all complete, Victor Peterson replied. He opened his leather briefcase. The click of the briefcase lock clearly echoed in the silence. Victor Peterson took out a thick red folder. Hold on, Tiffany intervened, sensing a threat to her position, but too foolish to keep quiet. What's going on here? Sarah, are you getting a divorce? If you want to, just do it. No need to bring a lawyer for that. Besides, David is already unhappy with you. Victor Peterson turned to Tiffany. His gaze was sharp as a razor. And who are you? Are you a legal resident of this household? Tiffany faltered. I'm David's colleague. Ah, a colleague. Victor Peterson smiled sarcastically. A colleague who has been living here for 3 days. A colleague who plans to sell someone else's property. What an interesting definition of work these days. Tiffany paled. How does he know? No need to accuse here, Carol intervened, pointing her wrinkled finger at Victor Peterson. This is our family matter. Don't interfere. You're an outsider here. Sarah, kick him out, or I'll disown you as a disobedient daughter. Sarah laughed. A quiet but unsettling laugh. Not hysterical, but dry, emotionless laughter. Sarah walked to the table where she had left the juice glasses. She took her glass, then comfortably sat on the armrest of the chair where Victor Peterson was sitting, a posture that showed who was in charge. You want to disown me, Mom? Sarah asked, swirling the glass in her hand. All right, but before you do, you'd better learn a few things. Sarah took a small sip of juice and then looked at the 3 of them one by one, David, Carol, Tiffany. Faces that had laughed at her just this morning. Faces that had planned her downfall. This house, Sarah pointed to the ceiling, is in my name. The Land Cruiser you wanted to sell, she pointed to the garage, is in my name. And the savings account you spent on your whims, the inheritance from my father. David's eyes widened. But we're husband and wife. Your wealth is my wealth. Incorrect, Victor Peterson stated firmly. He opened the red folder and pulled out a stamped document. This is a copy of the prenuptial agreement that Mr. David signed 3 years ago. Article 4. Section 1. All property acquired before marriage, including inheritance, gifts, and income from this property, is the sole property of the first party. Sarah R. Miller, and cannot be considered jointly acquired property. David's knees weakened. He remembered signing that paper because he was in a hurry to marry Sarah and thought it was just a formality that could be dispensed with later. And, furthermore, Victor Peterson added, pulling out a second document, this is a notice of asset freeze. As of 10 a.m., this Land Cruiser has been flagged in the DMV database as an object for which an attempt at fraud has been reported. So, Mr. Tony, Victor Peterson turned to Tony. If you buy this car now, you could be charged under Article 175 of the Criminal Code for receiving property known to be obtained through criminal means. The penalty is up to 2 years' imprisonment. Tony immediately jumped off the sofa, as if he had sat on a nail. He panicked. Oh, excuse me guys, I'm not involved in this. Tony grabbed his bag. I'm leaving. David, you're apparently crazy. You wanted to set me up too. You deal with this yourself. Without a farewell, Tony ran out of the house, brushed past the gate, started his old car, and quickly drove away. The four of them remained. David, Carol, and Tiffany stood like defendants before a judge. Sarah placed her glass on the table with a loud thud. She stood up, took off her old apron, still tied at her waist, and threw it in David's face. The dirty fabric momentarily covered her husband's face. Didn't you say this morning that you wanted a maid in this house, David? Sarah asked in a cold voice. David ripped the apron from his face. His eyes were red with anger and suppressed tears. From this moment on, Sarah continued, her eyes gleaming with victory. That's your job, yours, your mother's, and your shameless mistress's. Welcome to the hell you created for yourselves. The dirty apron slowly slid from David's face to the floor. It fell with a quiet thud that, however, sounded like a hammer blow in the quiet room. David's face flushed with a mixture of humiliation that shattered his personality and seething anger. In his eyes, Sarah was no longer a wife to be trampled, but a monster that had just awakened from a long sleep. Shameless! David roared. His voice was hoarse with uncontrollable emotions. How dare you throw a dirty rag in your husband's face? Where is your respect? What kind of wife are you? David took a step forward. His fists were tightly clenched, ready to strike to reclaim his dominance. For him, violence was the only way to suppress rebellion. But before he could swing, the two strong men, who had until now stood silently behind Victor Peterson, acted with lightning speed. One of the security guards intercepted David's wrist in midair with a steel grip. David winced in pain. He felt as if his bones were about to shatter. Let me go. This is my house. I have the right to discipline my wife, David yelled, trying in vain to break free. Correction, mister. David, Victor Peterson said in an emotionless tone, shuffling documents on his lap. This is not your house, and what you just did qualifies as attempted assault and battery in the presence of witnesses. We can add Article 116 of the Criminal Code or a charge of domestic violence to this case, if you wish. The guard sharply flung David's hand away, causing him to collapse onto the sofa next to Tiffany, who was now trembling with fear. Sarah still stood in her place, looking at a gasping David like a dog that had lost its fangs. There was not a trace of fear on her face. You still want to talk about respect, David? Sarah asked. She walked closer, rounding the glass table, approaching David, who was nursing his wrist. This morning, when you and your mother were laughing, discussing the plan to sell my car and turn me into your maid, where was your respect? Where was your conscience? We were just joking, Carol quickly said. Her elderly face was pale and sweaty. We were just joking. Sarah, you're so sensitive. You're upset with your husband and mother-in-law? You're still upset? Sarah chuckled bitterly. Joking. Selling property worth hundreds of thousands is a joke to you. Substituting car documents with recipes. That's a joke. Mom, and your plan is a crime. Sarah, listen to me. David tried to soften his voice, changing tactics from violence to manipulation, his usual weapon. He looked at Sarah with sadness in his eyes. I know you're angry, but we can discuss everything calmly. Please dismiss this lawyer first. We're husband and wife, darling. Family problems shouldn't be aired in public. It's shameful. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Weren't you ashamed to bring your mistress into your wife's house? Weren't you ashamed to feed and house her with your wife's money? Sarah pointed at Tiffany, who was trying to hide her face behind her blonde hair. She's my colleague, Sarah. You misunderstood everything, David continued to deny, though the truth was already obvious. A colleague who plans to buy a new house with money from selling my car. Sarah quickly interrupted him. I heard everything. David, every single word. Excellent. Today we'll sell that old clunker of your wife's. Remember that phrase, Tiffany? You said it. Tiffany froze when her name was called. She stared at Sarah with wide eyes. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but couldn't utter a word. Now answer my question. Sarah leaned towards David, piercing him with her gaze. Who owns this house? And who just lives here? David fell silent, his jaw clenched. He didn't want to answer, because that answer would destroy his ego as a man. Answer! Sarah suddenly yelled, startling David, Tiffany, and Carol. You! David whispered, almost inaudibly. What? I can't hear you? You want me to say it? Are you satisfied? David yelled in despair. Yes, it's your house. Are you satisfied now that you've humiliated your own husband? Sarah straightened up again, smiling contentedly. Good. You finally learned your place. So from this moment on, don't you dare yell or give orders in this house, because here, I am the law. Victor Peterson quietly cleared his throat, bringing everyone's attention back to the table where the legal documents lay. He adjusted his glasses, ready to deliver the second blow, the financial one. All right, since we've clarified the matter of house ownership, let's move on to a more important issue, money, Victor Peterson said. Mr. David, for 3 years of your marriage, you always claimed to be the breadwinner of the family. Is that correct? David slightly straightened his back, trying to gather the remnants of his dignity. Of course, I work from morning till night. All my salary goes into our joint account, and Sarah just sits at home and relaxes. True, Carol enthusiastically chimed in. My son is a manager. He has a big salary, so he has the right to enjoy what he's earned. And Sarah is a leech, living off her husband, but so stingy. Sarah only shook her head, looking at her mother-in-law with pity. Mom, do you really not know? Or are you just pretending? Shut up, Carol yelled. Victor Peterson raised his hand, signaling for silence. He picked up a sheet of paper. It was a thick bank statement. This is a summary of transactions on your joint account for 36 months, Victor Peterson explained. He handed the paper to David. Please take a look. Green marks deposits, red marks withdrawals. David roughly snatched the sheet, quickly scanning the figures. Please pay attention to the sources of deposits, Victor Peterson guided him. Every 20th of the month, $800 is deposited. That's your salary, Mr. David. Correct. David remained silent. That was indeed his basic salary. Now look at the deposits made on the 5th of each month, Victor Peterson continued. Between $10,000 and $15,000 is deposited monthly. The details state, dividends from Miller Construction LLC, and share from apartment rentals. David gasped. He saw these figures, neatly listed every month. The amounts were much larger than his salary. Miller Construction is the company inherited from Sarah's father. Sarah is the owner of the controlling stake, Victor Peterson calmly explained. Thus, to summarize over 3 years, Sarah's contribution to this account is approximately 95%, and yours is only 5%. But, David stammered, trying to find an excuse. He had never looked at the transaction details. He only looked at the total balance, which was always large, and thought it was due to his ability to manage money. He forgot that his luxurious lifestyle, payments for his iPhone, motorcycle tuning, Carol's large monthly allowance, treating friends, could not have been supported by his $800 salary. And now, let's look at the expenses. Victor Peterson turned the page. David's credit card bills, $500 a month. Transfers to Carol, $300 a month. Online purchases in Tiffany's name, $200 a month. Entertainment and lifestyle, $400 a month. Carol's eyes widened. Hold on. So, the monthly allowance David gave me was from Sarah's money? Mom, Victor Peterson said firmly. David's $800 salary Wouldn't even cover electricity and water in such a large house. Let alone give you $300. Simple math. David was in the red every month, and that deficit was covered by Sarah's money. Stunned silence enveloped the room. This truth hit Carol harder than a slap. She had long prided herself on David as a successful son who supported a useless wife. Now she learned that she and her son were parasites. She had eaten her daughter-in-law's money, only to humiliate her. "It can't be," David whispered. His hands trembled as he held the paper. "This is a fake. Sarah can't have that much money. She's just a housewife." "A housewife who inherited a business, David," Sarah said coldly. "I remained silent because I wanted to respect you as a husband. I allowed you to feel like a successful head of the family. I supported your ego with my money. And what in return? You wanted to sell the only memory of my father." Sarah took out her phone, opened her mobile banking app, and held the screen up to David's face. "Look here, David." The screen showed Sarah's personal account balance, to which she had just transferred everything. There were many, many digits. Enough to buy David's dignity 10 times over. "This morning I transferred all my money from the joint account. Now look at the balance of the account you were so proud of." David quickly pulled out his phone from his pocket. He opened the banking app. The internet seemed to slow down. Or maybe time slowed down for David. Loading. Success. Available balance. Sen. 225,000. Sen 225,000. 3,215.50. Is that all that's left? David silently stared at his phone screen. His world had collapsed. His plan to renovate the house, go on vacation with Tiffany, buy a new car, all evaporated in an instant. "My money," David whispered. "Not yours," Sarah sharply corrected him. "That's the remainder of your salary that you haven't spent yet. Be grateful." David's grief over the lost balance became an alarming signal for Tiffany. The woman with blonde hair and heavy makeup, which had begun to melt from sweat, understood her position. Tiffany wasn't stupid. She was an opportunist. She had latched onto David because he presented himself as a rich young boss, unhappy in his marriage. David promised luxury, a house, a car, but now before her was a man with a salary barely above the poverty line, living on his wife's wealth. A man whose account balance couldn't even buy one set of her skincare products. Tiffany slowly rose from the sofa. Her movements were slow. She tried to go unnoticed. "Where are you going?" Sarah asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to stop Tiffany. Tiffany turned around, forcing a strained smile. "Ah, Sarah, I just remembered, I have an urgent meeting at the office," my boss called. "I need to go back immediately." "I'm sorry, I don't want to interfere in your family problems." Tiffany took her purse, ready to abandon the sinking ship. She no longer cared about David. To her, he was now trash. "Sit down," Sarah ordered. "But, sister, I said, "Sit down," Sarah yelled loudly. One of Victor Peterson's security guards took a step, blocking Tiffany's path. Tiffany was forced to retreat and sit on the edge of the sofa, far from David. "You thought you could just come here, humiliate me, plan a crime, eat and sleep for free, and then leave as soon as you found out he had no money?" Sarah asked sarcastically. "I didn't know anything, sister, I swear." Tiffany began to cry falsely. "David invited me. He said he was a rich widower. He said you treated him badly. I was fooled too, sister. I'm also a victim." David looked at his mistress in surprise. "Tiffany, what are you talking about? This morning you yourself instigated me to sell the car. You yourself said Sarah was a fool." "Shut up," Tiffany said rudely. Her sweet mask disappeared. "If I had known you were broke, I wouldn't have looked at you. You pretended to be a manager, but you're just a parasite. You're disgusting." David froze. His heart was shattered. The woman he adored, the woman for whom he betrayed his faithful wife, was now biting him at the first sign of his poverty. Sarah slowly clapped her hands. "Clap, clap, clap. What a beautiful love story you have. Like Romeo and Juliet, only the pauper's version," Sarah sneered. She took a thin folder from the table and threw it onto Tiffany's lap. "What is this?" Tiffany asked with a trembling hand. "These are screenshots of your WhatsApp chats with David for the past month," Sarah replied. I hacked David's WhatsApp ever since you two started chatting frequently at night. Tiffany opened the folder. She paled even further. The contents were vulgar and incriminating. Tiffany, when are you going to kick your ugly wife out? Can't wait to be the lady of the house. Tiffany, sell her car already, darling. She doesn't understand laws. We'll run away with this money. Clearly, there's evidence of malicious intent and conspiracy to commit fraud, Victor Peterson added in a professional tone. Miss Tiffany, you are not just a mistress, but an accomplice to a crime. The penalty is the same as for the principal offender. Sarah, please. Tiffany fell to her knees. Her pride vanished in the struggle for freedom. Don't report me to the police. I promise. I'll leave. I'll block David's number. I won't bother you anymore. Please, sister, I still have a loan for my motorcycle unpaid. Sarah looked with disgust at the woman kneeling at her feet. Get up! Don't stain my floor with your fake tears. Tiffany stood up, wiping her nose. I won't report you now, Sarah said. But on one condition, you will watch David's downfall until the very end. You must see how pathetic the man you took from me has become. After that, you can leave with your shame. Tiffany quickly nodded, not daring to answer. She sat back in the corner silently, and David looked at her with longing in his eyes. Now Carol. The elderly woman realized that her two allies had fallen. David was paralyzed morally and financially. Tiffany had given up. Now it was up to her alone to confront the daughter-in-law she had oppressed for so long. Carol's tactic had always been the same. If violence didn't work, use old age. Carol suddenly clutched her chest. She tried to look suffering, breathing heavily and dramatically. Oh, my heart, Carol moaned, sinking into the armchair. I'm having a heart attack. David, help me. Sarah, how cruel you are. You're driving your mother-in-law to a heart attack. David, distraught, immediately panicked upon seeing his mother. Mom, what's wrong? Hold on, Mom. David looked at Sarah with anger. See? Are you satisfied? If Mom dies, you killed her. Victor Peterson had already risen to call an ambulance, but Sarah raised her hand, stopping him. Sarah didn't move. She watched this performance with an impassive face. David, Sarah called calmly. Your mother had a checkup last week at a reputable clinic. She has slightly elevated cholesterol, but her heart is healthy. Too healthy for someone who loves fried food and is constantly angry. Don't be smart. Mom really is sick. Sarah walked over to the stereo system next to the television. She pressed the play button on a small recorder connected to a Bluetooth speaker. A voice from the morning recording filled the room, clear and loud. Carol's voice. Recording. Your wife is a complete fool. Look at her. All she knows how to do is bow, cook, clean, and do laundry. She doesn't understand important documents. If she refuses to sign, I'll make her life so miserable that she'll run away herself. She won't be able to bear it. Carol's malicious laughter echoed through the room. Sarah turned off the recording. The voice of someone having a heart attack is not that strong. Mom, Sarah said coldly. And a person who plans to turn another's life into hell doesn't deserve pity when their plan fails. Carol, hearing the recording of her own voice, suddenly stopped moaning. The chest pain suddenly subsided, giving way to much greater humiliation. She slowly straightened up, realizing her acting hadn't worked. Sarah, Carol changed her tone to a pleading one, trying to appeal to emotions. I made a mistake, daughter. I'm an old woman. Old people often say foolish things. You're a kind, faithful daughter-in-law. You wouldn't be so cruel to me, would you? Aren't you afraid of karma for offending your mother-in-law? Karma? Sarah laughed bitterly. Her eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness, but from the anger that had built up over 3 years of her suffering. Mom, for 3 years I got up at 4 a.m., cooked your favorite oatmeal, washed your clothes by hand because you said the washing machine ruined them. I massaged your feet every night. And every month, through David, I transferred $300 to your account. Sarah pointed to Carol's chest. And what in return, Mom? You humiliated me in front of the neighbors, instigated David to find another wife, called me barren, even though David was the one who didn't want children yet. Where was your conscience as a woman? Carol lowered her head. She couldn't answer a single word, Sarah said, because it was all true. But I'm old, Sarah. I have no one else to rely on but David. If David has no money, what will I eat? Finally, Carol confessed her biggest fear: poverty. That's no longer my problem, Sarah replied firmly. You have a son you're so proud of. Yes, a successful manager. Ask him for food, not a foolish wife like me. Carol burst into tears. This time, her tears were real. Tears of regret, because she had traded a gold mine for a worthless rock. The clock on the wall showed 1 p.m. The hot sun seemed to maintain the intensity of the legal proceedings in the living room. All cards were revealed, all lies exposed. It was time for the verdict. Sarah sat down again next to Victor Peterson. She felt tired, but also a huge relief. The burden she had carried for 3 years was gone. So, to summarize, Victor Peterson said, taking on the role of presenter to conclude the drama legally, my client, Miss Sarah R. Miller, has strong evidence to file cases under the following articles: attempted fraud, conspiracy, assault, and battery under domestic violence laws. There is a recording, there are witnesses, there are written communications. David looked up. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red. You want to put your own husband in jail, Sarah? Depends on the circumstances, Sarah answered curtly. What circumstances? On how quickly you get out of this house, Sarah said. She stood up, looking at the 3 people in front of her one by one. I'm giving you 2 options, very simple options. Option A, Sarah raised one finger. Uncle Victor and I call the police right now. The evidence is collected. You can be arrested this afternoon. David and Tiffany will be charged with attempted fraud, Carol as an accomplice. You will be sleeping on a cold cell floor tonight. David, Carol, and Tiffany simultaneously shook their heads. Prison was a nightmare for them, accustomed to a comfortable life. Option B, Sarah raised 2 fingers. You leave this house right now, this very minute, taking nothing with you but the clothes on your backs. What? David yelled. But my clothes, my laptop, my watch, those are all my things. That laptop was bought with my supplementary credit card last month. It hasn't been paid off yet. That watch was my gift to you last birthday. Everything was bought with my money. Sarah quickly interrupted him. According to the prenuptial agreement, items bought by one spouse with their own funds are their property. But my work clothes, David pleaded. Am I going to leave in just a t-shirt? Take only the essentials. 1 small suitcase for the 2 of you. Leave the rest, Sarah ordered. You have 10 minutes. If you don't make it, it's option A. Victor Peterson looked at his watch. Time starts now. They panicked. David rushed into the bedroom. Carol, on trembling legs, ran to her room. Tiffany was confused because she had nothing here but her purse. You, Tiffany, Sarah called. You can leave right now. Take your bag and remember, if I ever see your face anywhere nearby again, the recording of your correspondence will end up in your office's HR department. Tiffany quickly nodded. Her face was pale. Without glancing towards David's room, without a farewell, she quickly ran out of the house. She abandoned David just like that. True love, what nonsense. Meanwhile, noise emanated from the master bedroom. David was haphazardly throwing clothes into a suitcase. He wanted to take his laptop, but remembered Sarah's threat and the sharp gaze of the security guards at the bedroom door. He didn't risk it. He only took a few shirts, underwear, and a toothbrush. Carol in the guest room was crying, folding her housecoats into a large black trash bag because she didn't have a suitcase. A pathetic sight. 10 minutes passed. David and Carol stood in the living room. David with 1 small suitcase. Carol with a trash bag full of clothes. They looked like beggars driven out from under a bridge. House keys, car keys, motorcycle keys, Sarah demanded, holding out her hand. With a heavy heart, David surrendered the keys he used to boast about to his friends as a symbol of success, now returned to their rightful owner. Wallet, Sarah said again. And my wallet too? David protested. The supplementary credit card in your wallet is registered to me. Give it back, David. David pulled out his leather wallet, took out the platinum credit card, and handed it over. Sarah took scissors from a desk drawer and cut the card in half, right in front of David's eyes. Crunch! Now leave, Sarah said, pointing to the open door. Sunlight streamed into the doorway. Outside, a cruel world awaited David and his mother. A world without air conditioning, without a land cruiser, without delicious and free food. David looked at Sarah one last time. In his eyes was regret, but more anger from his wounded ego. You'll regret this, Sarah. You can't live without a man. Sarah smiled a sincere and free smile. You're wrong, David. You were a burden in my life. I'm only just beginning to truly live. Leave. Victor Peterson's security guard yelled. David and Carol slowly exited. Outside the gate, several neighbors, who had heard the commotion, had already begun to gather and whisper. David lowered his head, holding back his shame. The guard closed the black wrought iron gates. Bang! The sound of metal concluded the chapter of Sarah's life as an oppressed wife. Inside the house, which had now grown quiet, Sarah took a deep breath, inhaling the air of freedom with the scent of victory. She turned to Victor Peterson and smiled. Thank you, Uncle Victor. Not at all, dear. Your father would be proud of you right now. The sound of the black wrought iron gates hitting the post, bang, echoed like a death knell for David and Carol's comfortable life. The sound of the lock, turned from inside by Victor Peterson's guard, confirmed that their path to paradise was closed forever. Outside, under the midday sun, the asphalt in the gated community radiated heat, making everything shimmer. David stood like a statue. With one hand, he tightly gripped the handle of his small suitcase. The other was clenched into a fist. Large drops of sweat ran down his temples, not just from the heat, but from cold humiliation. Carol stood nearby, clutching a large black trash bag, which now held all her possessions. Her appearance was pathetic, far from the image of a wealthy lady she had always presented at gatherings. This is just a dream, isn't it, David? Carol whispered in a hoarse voice. Did we really get kicked out? Where will we sleep tonight? David didn't answer. His throat was dry. He lowered his head, looking at his shoes, which were already starting to get dusty. Oh, Carol and David. This piercing voice made David want to sink into the ground. It was the voice of Brenda, their neighbor, known throughout the street as the local gossip. Brenda was watering flowers in her yard, but her sharp eyes were fixed on the suitcase and the trash bag. And why are you with a suitcase at noon? Going on vacation? How wonderful. Where are you going? To Maui? Brenda asked with obvious feigned innocence. She had surely heard the commotion. David forced a smile. Ah, yes, Brenda. We're going to visit relatives. A family celebration. A family celebration? Brenda nodded, looking at the trash bag. And why are your things in a trash bag? Carol, where's your expensive suitcase? You boasted about it so much at the last get-together. Carol's face flushed. Suitcase? Relatives lent it to us. All right, Brenda, we're in a hurry. Our taxi is waiting at the gate. Another lie. There was no taxi. Let's go, Mom. Come on, David said roughly, dragging his mother by the hand. They walked along the scorching sidewalk. The wheels of David's suitcase rattled loudly on the pavement. After walking only a quarter of a mile, Carol began to complain. Oh, David, my feet hurt. It's hot. Where are we going? Call a cab. Why are we walking like paupers? David stopped abruptly, under a tree. He turned to his mother with reddened eyes. Mom, do you think I have money for a cab? David yelled, unleashing his anger. I have $3,000 left, Mom. $3,000? That's barely enough for food for a couple of days if we're frugal. Carol was shocked. Why are you yelling at me? It's all your useless wife's fault. You should have resisted her. Mom, it's your fault I became like this. You constantly instigated me to ask Sarah for money. You demanded $300 every month. Now Sarah got angry. And we're suffering. Mother and son argued on the side of the road. David pulled out his phone. He needed shelter. He needed help. With trembling fingers, he found a WhatsApp contact. Sweetheart Tiffany. He pressed the call button. Rings, rings. No answer. He tried again. Subscriber temporarily unavailable. She hung up. David sent a message. Tiffany, where are you? I'm with Mom, we're on the street. We need somewhere to stay. I'll come to your apartment. Okay. A single gray checkmark. A few seconds later, Tiffany's beautiful profile picture disappeared, replaced by a gray silhouette. Her status also vanished. David's eyes widened. Blocked me, he whispered in disbelief. She blocked me. Eventually, from exhaustion and heat, David hailed an old jitney. Get in, Mom, David ordered. Into the jitney. Carol's eyes widened in disgust. It's hot in there, David. It smells of sweat. I don't want to. I don't have money, Mom. Do you understand? David pushed his mother into the crowded jitney. During the hour-long ride, Carol didn't stop complaining. David remained silent, looking out the window. They got out in a densely populated neighborhood, in a narrow and dirty alley. David remembered he had an acquaintance who rented cheap rooms here. We're going to live here? Carol asked hysterically as David stopped in front of a plywood door with peeling paint. It's the cheapest, Mom. $1,500 a month. I paid with the rest of my card and borrowed a little from a friend, David replied wearily. They went inside. The room was 10x 10 feet. No bed, just a plastic mattress. The toilet was inside, but it smelled, and the faucet leaked. A ceiling fan slowly rotated with a loud whir. Carol threw her trash bag in the corner and burst into loud tears. Oh God, why this punishment? To live in this rat hole? Sarah, what a wicked daughter-in-law. David sat down, leaning against the damp wall. His mother's crying, the noise of motorcycles in the street, the sound of karaoke from the neighbor, it all blended into an orchestra of his downfall. In the midst of his despair, his phone vibrated. An email notification from Peterson and Associates law firm. Subject, notification of divorce petition. He opened it. It was an official divorce petition. Sarah hadn't wasted any time. The petition stated Sarah's demands. Divorce without property division due to the prenuptial agreement and repayment of Lamdeffens, Linlingen, Axibly, Act, in Evermentitted, 18, I know no, Allenitted, Take Stopagetted, Actually, Tenmateded, Writers is hated distis, Effexponit, in prasses, Aden, in ever, at dolls, ac, in Tollivan taxes, action, today, Tess, in Resher, IMS, AT described, axis, in Benedict, included and intention, and ASCO, experience status, in tas perdudity, extenested, tick is not con, is never 5 and 100, H is no, and that's timed to the tapless, taus, anadecu, in the stexes, everyone, every porting from audit, last presented everyone, it's all of ace, everyone, this snate, exprams down, in all way, minus it, attention, and this free the constagraded on sabor, ass, actually havocked, 200,000 that David had allegedly spent during their marriage. 200,000? David felt faint. He didn't have that kind of money. He didn't even have money for dinner tonight. A week later, David came to court in a wrinkled shirt. He was alone. He couldn't afford a lawyer. Meanwhile, Sarah arrived with her legal team, looking formidable. Sarah had changed significantly. She wore an elegant white blazer. Her hair was neatly styled, and her skin looked healthy. No more old housecoats, no more tired look. An aura of a successful woman radiated from her. When the session began, David made a last dramatic attempt. He fell to his knees before Sarah in the negotiation room. Sarah, please forgive me, David cried. This time his tears were real, born of fear of poverty. I was wrong. I promise I'll change. I'll be a good husband. Don't divorce me, Sarah. Pity Mom. She's sick in that rented kennel. Sarah looked at David, kneeling at her feet. Before, her heart might have softened, but now she saw only a bad actor with an old script. Get up, David, Sarah said emotionlessly. Don't humiliate yourself any further. I love you, Sarah. I love you very much, Sarah smiled sarcastically. You love my money, David, not me. The proof? When my money disappeared, or when you thought it disappeared, your love disappeared too. Sell the car? That was Tiffany who instigated me. That was her malice. Don't shift the blame to others. You were the one who signed fake checks. You were the one who transferred money from the accounts. It was you, David. Victor Peterson placed a thick folder of documents on the table. Mr. David, he said, our client is kind. Sarah has agreed to withdraw the criminal case for the embezzlement of $200,000. She doesn't want to see her ex-husband rotting in prison. Hope appeared on David's face. Really? Thank you, Sarah. You're an angel. Hold on, Victor Peterson said. Conditions. You agree to the divorce without objection. Acknowledge all your mistakes, and never approach or contact Sarah again. If you violate this even once, one chat, one call, we will immediately resume the criminal case, and we have enough evidence to send you to prison for 5 years. David swallowed hard. Prison or poverty, but free. And furthermore, Sarah added, I know about your online casino gambling addiction, David. David froze. This was his darkest secret. You have debts to 3 payday loan companies. Isn't that right? Sarah continued, exposing his shame. About $50,000 in total, and you listed my number as a contact person without my permission. David lowered his head, sweating. I changed my number, Sarah said. So, starting tomorrow, they won't bother me anymore. They'll be looking for you at your office, in your rented room. Enjoy, David. With a trembling hand, David signed the divorce agreement. This signature became a mark of his complete defeat. Karma did not delay. 2 days after the court, 2 gangster-looking men approached David, who was sitting outside his rented room. Hey, gambler, pay your debt. These were debt collectors. David had been fired from his job for using company property for personal purposes and for declining productivity due to stress. Pay now or we're taking your motorcycle. A fight broke out. Carol ran out, screaming, Help! One of the collectors shoved her, and she fell into a dirty puddle. David crawled out of the puddle, dirty and smelly. He sat on the curb and cried like a child. Carol approached, but not to help, but to hit him on the back. Useless son, what a disgrace. Why did you gamble, David? Shut up, Mom, David yelled, pushing his mother away. Carol fell. This time, she didn't get up. Her face turned pale. The accumulated stress, eating instant noodles, and the shock of the thug's arrival triggered a sharp spike in her blood pressure. Oh, David. I really don't feel well, she whispered. David thought she was faking again, like at Sarah's house. He only realized she wasn't when 10 minutes later, neighbors knocked and said Carol had lost consciousness, and her face was distorted. A mild stroke. That night, in a cramped ward of the county hospital, David sat alone. He had no money for medicine. No Isabella. No Sarah. No Land Cruiser to sleep in. He had to sleep on the hospital floor on a piece of cardboard. When he closed his eyes, he remembered his old bedroom, the soft bed, the cool air conditioning. Regret enveloped him like a huge wave. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, the sun lit up the garden behind Sarah's house. The house had been transformed. The living room walls were repainted a calm sage green. The black leather sofa was thrown out. The house no longer had a toxic aura. Sarah was in the kitchen. Her kingdom had now become the center of her business. Not a kitchen where she was enslaved, but a professional kitchen where she managed her team. After David left, Sarah decided to no longer hide her talent. She opened a premium catering business called Sarah's Kitchen. Using her capital and her late father's connections, her business quickly took off. That day, Victor Peterson stopped by with the official divorce documents. Congratulations, Sarah. You're officially a free woman, he said, handing her a green folder. Sarah accepted the folder. Thank you, Uncle Victor. Such a relief. It's as if I've breathed for the first time in 3 years. By the way, any news about them? Victor Peterson cautiously said. I heard from an informant that David is working as a parking attendant at a market. His mother had a mild stroke, and now she's confined to their rented room. Neighbors say they often argue, blaming each other. Sarah fell silent, hearing the news. She felt a slight pang of pity, but immediately dismissed it. This was the result of their choices. She didn't wish them ill, but she wasn't obligated to help those who tried to destroy her. I hope this serves as a lesson for them, Uncle Victor. That evening, Sarah sat on the terrace, drinking chamomile tea and eating a warm croissant. She looked at her newly washed white Land Cruiser. She remembered how David and his company had laughed at the plan to sell the car. "We'll make her our maid," they had said. Now David was a slave to his own cruel fate. Her phone rang. A message from old friends whom David had forbidden her to see. "Heading to Napa Valley for the weekend. Let's celebrate your freedom. I've already booked a cottage. Only missing you." Sarah typed a reply with a wide smile. "Ready. I'll bring the most delicious food in the world for you all. Let's go." The wind caressed Sarah's face, blowing through her fragrant hair. She closed her eyes, reveling in the gratitude that filled her heart. No more fear, no more yelling, no more betrayal. This was the beginning of her new life. The sun was just rising, and its light was beautiful. And so ends the story of Sarah's rebirth. Thank you so much for your dedicated attention to the very end. While you listened to her struggle, where are you now? Are you resting at home, traveling, or busy at work? What lesson from Sarah's story resonated most with you? What message would you like to share with our listeners who may be going through similar trials? We want to read your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. If this story touched you, a simple click on the like button would be a great help to us. And to become part of our growing family and not miss out on future stories, please subscribe. Your storyteller is with you again. Until next time.